The internet can't decide whether it wants you to be boyfriend, daddy, dad.
What the is this piece of shit?
But do you think it's safe to say that Reed is the first capital D daddy in the MCU?
No. I would say he's in a group of a capital D daddies.
I mean, it's your ass, not mine.
Listen, these are gorgeous. I think that's my favorite image so far.
Just our hands.
Yeah.
I did not come down here just to get jerked off.
I've got one big spoiler that I'll share.
Sure. Go on. What? Like what?
I have relationships with women and sex with men.
What movie you want to see? You want to see a Pedro Pascal movie? You want to see a Pedro Pascal movie? Or do you want to see a Pedro Pascal movie?
You're famously the daddy of the internet. Yeah. Oh, he's been known to get a little bit snippy.
That was painful to watch.
Yeah.
You've kind of become a social media icon for your force-filled, snatched fierceness face.
Oh, God.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Face is good, babe. Face just means fierce.
Does it mean like
fabulous, beautiful?
Where's the towel?
What's your rising sign? Is it really? Oh, I'm very judgmental.
Holy shit. This sucks.
Nerdrotic.com.
Greetings, friends. It's been a year since Kevin Feige announced the triumphant return of Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom.
Is the door to Iron Man totally closed? Because I don't believe it is.
If I pick the jersey back up and put it on, wouldn't you feel a little bit like, oh,
No.
crap?
No. Here's what I think.
All right.
They go through a few semi-lackluster Avengers movies without you.
It's been a year since Marvel announced the return of the Russo brothers to direct Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. It's also been a year since the massive success of Deadpool and Wolverine. Additionally, it's been a year since they introduced the cast of the Fantastic Four at San Diego Comic-Con. And despite Pedro Pascal's weirdness, there was still some cautious optimism. And it's been 1 year since it was reported that Marvel had purged all of their woke staff and the staff who wasn't really interested in comics to improve its movies. All of this news combined created a lot of conversations and had people wondering, had Marvel finally seen the error of their ways? Unfortunately, that excitement did not last long. Fast forward to 2025, where Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios still had some business to do, and so far they've gone 0 for 4. You know the drill, but let's go over it again. Captain America Brave New World flopped.
Crap.
Daredevil Born Again was a massive disappointment.
Crap.
And although some people liked it, Thunderbolts was a box office bomb.
Mega crap.
And Ironheart was a preventable yet inevitable disaster.
I'll give you $200 for all of them.
And this has led to Disney's comrades in the access media openly questioning Kevin Feige's decision-making. Now, they're the wrong questions because they're the access media, but they're not known for openly calling out studio heads outside of David Zaslav. And let's not forget Deadpool co-creator Rob Liefeld openly calling for Kevin Feige to be fired. Never mind the fact that he has an axe to grind due to not being invited to a party, but I'm here for it. So you can understand why the Marvel Studios boss is feeling the heat, and some may argue that he should have felt it a long time ago. And that's what probably led to Kevin Feige giving an enlightening yet ill-advised interview to select press of the access media ahead of Fantastic Four First Steps, where Kevin Feige addressed a lot of criticisms, including why it's taken 6 years to make a Blade movie, where he said, and I quote, "We didn't want to simply put a leather outfit on Marshall Ali and have him start killing vampires."
Sir, that's all I want.
Never mind the fact that's exactly what people wanted, but I'm guessing they just got hung up on how many diverse girl bosses they needed in the movie. He addressed the firing of Jonathan Majors, who he wouldn't mention by name. He was only referred to as the actor or the Kang actor, and Kevin was planning on kicking him to the curb before Ant-Man Comumania. Another criticism is not having a finished script, but Kevin claims that they've never started a movie without a finished script. They just completely rewrite them, but they don't call it rewriting. They call it plussing. And then there's this banger from The Wrap. Kevin Feige stands by Marvel's diversity. Marvel is the world outside your window. I said this before woke and DEI became a thing, and I'm still saying it after. Well, in truth, Kevin has turned Marvel, which was the world outside your window, into Disney Marvel, which is the world outside of Hollywood's window, which has led to a complete disconnect with the audience and the previously mentioned failures. And that's why the Fantastic Four First Steps is the most important movie to Disney Marvel since since Endgame. That's why we shouldn't be surprised we're hearing this from select Access Media critics. Fantastic Four first reaction praise immaculate VFX and pitch-perfect script, one of the best things Marvel has ever made, including unique reactions like this. Hashtag Fantastic Four, quite possibly the best Marvel Studios film ever released. Hashtag The Fantastic Four First Steps is visually one of the best things Marvel has ever made. Parts feel like Interstellar. Marvel has finally delivered not only the best hashtag Fantastic Four movie, but one of the most spectacular, emotional, creative, bold, visually stunning Marvel films ever made. This one's a bit different. Hashtag Fantastic Four is the most visually stunning and tonally distinct MCU movie yet. And I think this is everyone's favorite review. Hashtag Fantastic Four is a masterpiece. The visual effects and the score are a huge standout. Galactus is huge in IMAX. It's emotional and gives you hope. It beats you off and doesn't stop. Stay until the end credits. Well played, sir. At this point, I can divulge that yours truly attended an early screening to the Fantastic Four First Steps, and hopefully not with this guy. And I can state without reservation, Fantastic Four First Steps is a triumph and immaculate with a pitch-perfect script. It's one of the best things Marvel has ever made. Well, after a couple of weeks of the very cordial, nuanced, level-headed, and downright reasonable conversations going on with Superman, and I'm absolutely sure that's going to continue with the Fantastic Four First Steps, featuring the universally loved Pedro Pascal and the overwhelmingly popular casting choice of the female Silver Surfer. And because some people are trying to make hashtag superfantastic a thing, the debate will rage on. Which movie was better, Superman's James Gunn or Fantastic Four? Well, according to the box office, it's ScarJo versus the dinosaur with Down syndrome. But as far as these two superhero films going head to head, well, we'll get to that. But I can say the Fantastic Four First Steps is the best Disney Marvel movie of the year. Being an unapologetic comic book fan, this review will come from a comic book fan's perspective. The Fantastic Four is one of my favorites, and I believe it is the purest form of superhero storytelling. And that's what makes it the most difficult to adapt. The best version is obviously the 90s animated series. I love the novelty of the Tim Story movies, and I adore the schlocky Corman version, which as of right now still has the best on-screen representation of Doctor Doom, with all due respect to Julian McMahon, rest in peace. And coincidentally enough, Mr. Fantastic in the Corman version uses his powers just about as much as Pedro Pascal does in First Steps. But after Disney paid $72 billion to Fox to get the rights back to things like the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and others, and hey, maybe in the next 150 years you might break even, they're finally taking a crack at Marvel's first family, and they're swinging for the fences by adapting one of the greatest comic book stories of all time, The Coming of Galactus. Admittedly, my expectations were pretty low considering the previously mentioned casting of Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, one of the smartest men in the Marvel Universe, and the incredibly stupid decision of gender swapping the Silver Surfer, which is an absolute deal breaker for me. That's why I'm surprised I was with the Fantastic Four First Steps for a good portion of the movie. Unfortunately, while there was a concerted effort with this, Disney Marvel just can't get out of their own way. And despite the overpraise from the early reactors, I will agree that the retro futuristic look really works. It's pretty slick. Everything is analog. A lot of people will compare it to the Jetsons. Some may compare it to the Venture Brothers. I'll say it's the Fantastic Four. And dare I say there's even a style to the directing, something we haven't seen in the MCU in years. And while many will be comparing this to Superman, and we will do that later, I think it's more fair to compare it to other Marvel films. And the one distinct difference is the story. It's actually enclosed and it's earnest. I'd like to preface this statement by saying we need to replace the boy who cried wolf fable with the boys who cried that this is the best Marvel thing since the last Marvel thing. That being said, this is probably the most serious Marvel has taken itself, with a couple of very large exceptions, since Endgame, and now I'm gonna slap myself for saying that. Because the Fantastic Four First Steps, and I'm not gonna say that stupid title anymore. Say it! I don't wanna! Is not without its problems, but let's start with the good. First of which is the story. It's simple and it's focused. The wildly popular Fantastic Four face their most daunting challenge yet as they defend the Earth from Galactus and the female Silver Surfer, as Disney Marvel faces their most daunting challenge yet, making a good movie. And just like with Superman, they are an established team of superheroes, in this case, 4 years into their run. And through a montage where they clearly cut stuff out, including John Malkovich's Red Ghost, who I wish they would have left in, they show you that the public has reverence for them. And they show you acts of heroism without the Fantastic Four getting their asses kicked all the time. And the Fantastic Four isn't filled with a bunch of side characters. It is focused on the Fantastic Four, Galactus, and unfortunately the female Silver Surfer. And yes, it's about family. Family, family, family. You heard me right. Disney, the company once known as a family brand that absolutely betrayed that by getting involved in some state politics, has suddenly rediscovered the nuclear family. As far as characters go, I'd have to say my favorite is Ebon Moss-Bachrach's Ben Grimm. This is the best the characters ever looked on film, and they finally added the eyebrow. It's very Kirby and John Byrne. He didn't have the gravelly voice, but it didn't bother me, and there wasn't a bad scene he was in. I just wish there was more. Because arguably, well, it's not arguable, the Thing is the most popular character in the Fantastic Four, and he's relegated to 4th in this. Another standout is Joseph Quinn, who was great as Eddie in Stranger Things Season 4, playing the Human Torch. You know, there was a narrative being pushed out there by the likes of Variety, who we'll get to, that we were going to get some form of modern, kinder, gentler, soy Johnny Storm. Well, I'm here to tell you he's a smartass, he's straight, and he likes the ladies. And along with Ben Grimm, they get the look right, the powers right. So far, so good. Now, you can't blame fans for those narratives that were being pushed, and you can't blame them for being surprised Johnny Storm isn't gay. Because Kevin Feige, Marvel Studios, Disney, Lucasfilm, and hell, Hollywood have earned their reputation and do not deserve the benefit of the doubt. So you also can't blame the fans for thinking that Sue Storm, the First Lady of Marvel, will just be portrayed as another insufferable Marvel girl boss. And you could completely understand why people would think that, considering her positioning on the poster, the promotional material, which, just like Superman, Marvel's shown too much, and if you've seen it all, that's a good portion of the movie. And I'm not going to say those moments aren't there, because Disney Marvel just can't help themselves. But Vanessa Kirby is a good Sue Storm who actually loves her family and is a very protective mother, which makes it all the more frustrating with some of the decisions the writers made with her at the end of the movie, which we'll get to. And to round out the good, we are going to talk about something comic book fans have been waiting for a long time: a fully realized Big Purple Galactus, played to perfection by Ralph Ineson. He is ominous, he is dangerous, and something we rarely see in the MCU, an actual threat. And just like in the comics, not necessarily evil, but a force of nature. Aside from his questionable choices in employees, when the Fantastic Four go to negotiate with Galactus and you see him in all his glory in the Geiger-esque tattoo, it's brilliant. That's what makes it, again, frustrating that the writers chose to do him dirty in the end. This brings us to the it's just fine to tolerable, and yes, surprisingly enough, that's Pedro Pascal's Mr. Fantastic. I, along with many others, suffer from Pedro Pascal fatigue, and it's a tall order to ask people to get over it. To be fair, he does what he's asked to do in this movie, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he is completely miscast. John Hamm would have been a better choice, but considering Pedro Pascal wasn't Marvel's first, second, or third choice, maybe he was asked and turned down the role. He is unquestionably the leader of the Fantastic Four. He just looks miserable doing it and spends most of the movie looking like he's on the verge of tears. He is playing a desperate Reed Richards, but sometimes it just comes off as a sad sack Reed Richards, because you can still have those things with a commanding presence with the proper actor, which Pedro was not in this case. Surprisingly enough, he did have chemistry with Vanessa Kirby, maybe not as much as on the red carpet or the promotional tours, but it was there. And don't get me started on Marvel betting its future on Pedro Pascal as the leader of the Avengers, especially when they don't show him really using his powers. And if you think I was joking about the Corman Fantastic Four using Reed's powers just about as much as they do in First Steps, I wasn't. And according to some who work in or around Marvel, they didn't use his powers because it looked goofy. Never mind the fact that stretchy powers looked good in One Piece and brilliant in The Incredibles. Now, if you want to argue Pedro Pascal looks goofy, I'm with you. But as mediocre as he was, the thing that ultimately brings it down for me as a comic book fan, and I'm not going to apologize for it, is the female Silver Surfer. Got nothing against the actress Julia Garner, who had a very good response to the controversial casting, which was basically, I have a job to do and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. Respect. No, I blame the decision makers at Marvel, because I walked into the Fantastic Four thinking the female Silver Surfer's a dumb idea, and I walked out of the Fantastic Four thinking the female female Silver Surfer is a dumb idea. While Kevin Feige is out there bloviating that fans were demanding that people wanted to see characters like Miss Marvel, all while bringing us characters like America Chavez, female Thor, and Ironheart, when there was a character that fans were actually clamoring to see, along with a real Galactus, and that's Norrin Radd as the Silver Surfer. And after watching the film, I could definitively say that she was completely pointless at best, and I wouldn't agree with this, you could say she was ancillary. But wait a minute, I was told that they actually justified this decision by having Johnny Storm hit on her. Well, thanks to too many promotional clips, you've already seen most of the scenes they had together, and that was essentially to set up her Rose Tico moment in the end. Again, we're gonna get to that. And those reshoots with Julia Garner to provide more context to the character actually make things worse. They spent millions of dollars on a flashback that lasts just a few seconds showing Shalabal on Zenn-La as a single mother. That's right, no Norrin Radd or dad to be found. And she's barely in the film. The Silver Surfer in 2007's Rise of the Silver Surfer was more developed, and ultimately it didn't add to the film. It took away from it because it wasn't a decision based on creativity, it was one based on identity. It's as bad as casting Black Snape, and it's a classic example of Disney Marvel snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory. But the female Silver Surfer was not the only dumb thing in Fantastic Four. Because it's the kind of movie, and my good friend Mahler loves to hear this, that you need to turn your brain off to. Marvel's First Family is a science fiction superhero story, but this one didn't want to get bogged down in all that science. It's also incredibly important to have smart people write smart people. Matt Shakman, the director of Fantastic Four, also directed WandaVision, and there are similarities between the two, not just in style and tone. Both of them started out promising and then fell flat in their face in the end. We're hitting some spoilers. An exorbitant amount of time in this movie is spent on Franklin Richards, preparing for the birth of Franklin Richards, the birth of Franklin Richards, and what kind of powers is Franklin Richards going to have. And he certainly presents a problem for Marvel Comics and this film because he's incredibly OP. I digress. In the clip that most of you already saw after the female Silver Surfer chooses Earth as the next planet for Galactus to consume, the Fantastic Four, including a very pregnant Sue Richards, fly in their ship Excelsior to Galactus's Ta-2. Galactus offers to spare the Earth in exchange for their unborn child, who he says possesses the power cosmic. And that's because Galactus wants to quit being Galactus and have Franklin take over for him. So you introduce a Galactus who wants to quit. Now, in the comics anyway, Galactus has the power to create life, so I'm guessing he can probably induce labor since Sue is about to pop. Now, is there a power cosmic daycare on Ta-2? And maybe this justifies the gender swap of the female Silver Surfer because Franklin Richards will need a nanny. Who knows? Fantastic Four obviously don't accept those terms and escape, and then Sue gives birth in space while they flee Galactus and the female Silver Surfer. Admittedly, it's a cool scene until you think about things like, what the hell is she even doing there? These are supposed to be smart people, and yes, Franklin Richards is the MacGuffin of this film, and the whole point was to save him and Earth, but they didn't seem too concerned about their baby at this point. But this does set up an interesting problem. How does the Fantastic Four save their son and Earth, who will turn on them from Galactus? And that's indeed what happens. Earth starts turning on the Fantastic Four for not giving up their son, and they show the repercussions of this decision for about 10 minutes. And then it gets solved pretty easily with a speech by Sue Storm, and then the world unites to fight Galactus. And Pedro Pascal's Reed Richards' big plan is to teleport the Earth.
We should take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else!
And by gum, it almost works, but then it's thwarted by the female Silver Surfer. And this is where the whole Johnny Storm and female Silver Surfer romance becomes pointless. Because instead of using that connection to turn the Silver Surfer, Johnny Storm plays her the last messages of all the planets she helped destroy, and she has a nervous breakdown. To be fair, it's a pretty accurate depiction of a woman being held accountable.
Remember, they're just jokes. We're all gonna die soon, and there's no sequel.
So now the plan is to teleport Galactus instead of the planet Earth. Now, you would think the smartest man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe would have led with that. Now, they did have to use Franklin Richards as bait, so it was seen as a last resort, but considering a little bit earlier in the film, you were willing to risk his life and the life of his mother by taking him to Galactus, I don't see the problem here. And this is where they do Galactus, Sue Storm, and the rest of the Fantastic Four dirty. Because Sue Storm, by herself, holds off Galactus while reminding Reed Richards to save his own son. And just like with Superman, they're pushing a bad guy through a portal. What would have been better? The entire Fantastic Four holding him off instead of just Sue. Now, the other three guys did fight him, but it was inconsequential. So yes, it's Sue Storm and the other three guys. And this is obviously a depowered Galactus who needs one more push to get through that portal. And as the Human Torch gets ready for his hero moment, he gets Rose Tico'd by the female Silver Surfer. And the spoilers on Reddit told it true. Galactus is defeated by the women.
Girls get it done.
And I was asked by everyone's pal Alan Ing if I would have liked that scene more if it was the Norrin Rad Silver Surfer, and the answer is yes. Because you know where there's a better ending to this story? The comics. And it's not like you're adapting phone book fantasy. We're talking 3 comics from the 60s that are under 100 pages, including the ads. It would have been better with a male Silver Surfer. It would have been better with Alicia Masters, where you can spend a little less time on It's All About the Baby and a little more time on Ben Grimm's self-loathing. You could have introduced the Watcher, and yes, it would have been better with the Ultimate Nullifier, which leads to Galactus leaving the Earth alone. Now, Sue Storm sacrifices her life, defeating Galactus with the help of the female Silver Surfer, but she's immediately resurrected by Franklin Richards.
Barely an inconvenience.
Who presents the same problem in the MCU as he presents in the comic books. Now you have somebody who can just resurrect somebody whenever they want. Now, the infant god is a concept that works as long as you keep them young. But going back to the sad Galactus who wants to quit getting defeated pretty easily, it echoes back to Echo with Kingpin. You've diminished one of your biggest bads, and if he comes back, you could just call the MCU's Captain Marvel and Gaia, and they would make easy work of him, which is preposterous. And as far as anybody getting their hopes up for the real Silver Surfer turning up at some point, no. The female Silver Surfer went through the portal with Galactus, and if he's coming back, she's coming back. So, considering hashtag super fantastic, what is a better movie? Superman or Fantastic Four? As far as character-driven storytelling and earnestness is concerned, I would have to give the nod to at least the first 2/3 of Fantastic Four, but Superman has a much better cast. Superman definitely has more action, and the Fantastic Four is a bit slow, but at least occasionally it was engaging, but I think that will affect its rewatchability. Both films really embrace the Silver and Bronze Age comics of it all, which I love. That's why I'm very surprised to say, with one big female Silver Surfer exception, that the Fantastic Four took the assignment more seriously. Unfortunately, both films were brought down by some pretty dumb decisions, the frequently aforementioned gender swap and evil Jor-El. Superman has a lead actor in David Corenswet who's really good but doesn't get enough respect within his film, and Fantastic Four has a lead actor in Pedro Pascal who no one outside of Hollywood respects. James Gunn's Superman isn't woke, and while it's dialed down to Disney Marvel standards, there is modernity in Fantastic Four with a heavy dose of girl power at the end. But I will give Disney Marvel credit, at least through the first 2/3 of the film, they made the Fantastic Four egalitarian. And yes, I realized I just gave a compliment for doing the bare minimum. That's how far the bar has been lowered, so if I am forced to choose between watching Superman or the Fantastic Four, I'll watch F1. But seriously, and I can't believe I'm saying this, and it's not by much, but FF is slightly better. And The Incredibles is still the best Fantastic Four movie. Ultimately, just like with Superman, I walked out of the theater feeling whelmed. And I would have given the Fantastic Four a much higher grade if you had properly cast Reed and a male Silver Surfer with some obvious tweaks to the script. To use what some may consider as an outdated saying, but in truth it's not, and if my aunt had nuts, she'd be my uncle. But I'm not overlooking the positive here. Outside of nostalgia bait and Spider-Man, Disney Marvel made a new movie that's mid, with parts I really enjoyed. And that's a win. You know what we like to say around here, progress, not perfection. The Fantastic Four First Steps is indeed the best Disney Marvel film of the year. I guess the one good thing to come out of Superman and the Fantastic Four is the general public is becoming more aware of something we've known for a long time. Variety and their ilk in the access media, the legacy media with all of their constant gaslighting, is and always has been the enemy of the people. And they have done as much, if not more, damage to fandom than corporate Hollywood. Because no, it wasn't you. And as far as the superhero film is concerned, it's been said that its fate will be decided in July of 2025. And the verdict is, its future lies in mediocrity.
Nerdrotic.com.
Wait, one more thing. As you know or may not know, I have never and will never stop one of my videos for a sponsor, with one exception, to shill my own stuff, because I wrote a book with admittedly a lot of help. And no, thankfully for you, it won't be some insufferable zippity-doo-dah, how did I become a YouTuber? Because if it was, it would go something like this: get kicked out of your house permanently in your teenage years and become a hopeless, homeless drug addict, OD a couple times, go to jail, go to prison, get out, get sober, get married, get divorced, get married again, open a comic shop, relapse, almost get divorced again, file for bankruptcy, get sober again, and then start a YouTube channel. That wouldn't be the best advice. But we wrote the book anyway, and it's basically my journey to how I became a grateful recovering dope fiend. If you're interested, pre-orders start at 3 p.m. Central Time this Friday, July 11th through Ripaverse's Rip Ascend.